Assalamu alaikum. May the peace, love and blessings of Allah be with you. In each video in this series, I'm going to share a verse of the Quran which contains one of the core values of the Quran, along with an understanding of psychology, which will, inshallah, make it a lived reality in your own life. The word ihsan can be translated in a lot of different ways, and one of the ways is goodness, or any act of goodness or kindness is ihsan. So a simple way of understanding that verse is, can the reward for goodness be anything other than goodness? In other words, we do good in this life, Allah rewards us with good in the next life. But there's another meaning as well, which is that ihsan itself, that being in a state of ihsan itself is its own reward. It's so enjoyable and pleasurable, it's its own reward. Now there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which explains ihsan. The Archangel Jibreel asked the Prophet, what is ihsan? And the Prophet ﷺ said, it's to worship Allah as if you see Him. And even though you cannot see Him, indeed Allah sees you. I want to share with you some insights that I've had about this simple hadith, which is the starting point of the whole Sufi tradition in Islam. It's the starting point of all of Tasawwuf. So this simple hadith, it starts by saying, what is ihsan? An ya'bud Allah, to worship Allah. Now here's something pretty obvious. You can't worship Allah in the past or the future. You can only worship Allah now, in this moment. In this very moment, there is a particular way of worshipping Allah. The way to be present that is embedded within this simple saying, an ya'bud Allah, كأنك تراه أن يعبد الله, is to pour all of your attention into what you're doing. Like, we all know that if we're praying but our mind isn't in the prayer, then that prayer it's not a real prayer. It's not a connected prayer. If we do salah but your mind is about the shopping that you've got to do next, or about one of the bills that you've got to pay, or your mind is thinking about some wrong that someone did to you, you're in the past and the future and you're not present during the prayer itself. In fact, do it right now. Right now, pour all of your attention into what you're doing. Maybe you're just sitting and watching. Right now I'm just sitting, but I'm sitting with all of my attention. I'm talking to you and I'm doing it with all of my attention. That's the essence of an ya'bud Allah, to worship Allah, is to put all of your attention into what you're doing. The second thing is the Prophet ﷺ said, an ya'bud Allah ka'annaka tarahu. Worship Allah as if you see Him. Now this is a very strange thing to say. Why? Because Allah is unimaginable by definition. Laysa kamithlihi shay. There is nothing comparable to Allah. So anything you could possibly imagine in your mind about what Allah is, that's not Allah. So how do you do that? Quiet your mind. As you're going about your day, you have hundreds, thousands of thoughts run through your mind each day. But you might notice that there can be a gap between one thought and the next. And in that gap is what we would call having a quiet mind. Now when you quiet your mind, you're actually closer to Allah than you could ever be in any other state. Quietening your mind just means noticing the gap between one thought and the next and entering that gap consciously. A simple way to enter that gap, it's a little thought experiment you might want to try out right now. I want you to ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. And you might notice that for a few moments your mind was quiet, that you didn't have all these thoughts rushing through your mind. Now that's the state to be in when you start the prayer and say, Allahu Akbar. So now the third thing about this hadith, وَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ إِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. And although you cannot see Him, indeed Allah sees you. I want you just right now to imagine or to become aware of the fact that Allah is seeing you. Where does your attention go? Now for a lot of people, and for me, the moment I realize Allah sees me, I'm like, how am I sitting? What am I doing with my hands? Allah is seeing me right now. That's very normal for our attention to go inwards when we realize that Allah is watching us. And this is the third method of becoming present that is embedded within this hadith, which is to pour your attention into your body. And this relates to the hadith, by the way. My servant comes closer to me with the obligatory actions and then the sunnah actions until I become the sight with which he sees, the hearing with which he hears, the legs with which he walks, the hands with which he works. That's the state of ihsan. That's what we're working towards. And if you want a much more in-depth analysis of how to get there, how to get into this psychological state of ihsan, go ahead and check out the book, Inside the Soul of Islam. There's a whole chapter about this. You can get a few chapters for free by going to www.insidethesoulofislam.com/free.